What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video, and in this video we're going to be breaking down one tip for every single weapon in Valorant. You see, mastery of every weapon is going to make you an absolute god in your games, because you never know what weapon you're going to find or need to use. So without further ado, let's break it all down. But the GameLeap website is the one place where you can master any of these weapons and get that top tier mechanical skill that is going to easily allow you to climb the ladder. So do yourself a favor, don't miss out on this amazing 50% off sale in the links down below. But enough of all of that, let's jump into the video. Now the first weapon we're going to go over is none other than the Vandal, which got a buff and a lot of people have been using it more and more, including pro play, but some people just seem to not be able to kill anyone on the Vandal. Well, the thing that you're doing far too much on the Vandal is committing to crouching. The problem with committing to crouching far too much is one of the biggest benefits of the Vandal is the fact that because you can tap a lot on the weapon, and it's extremely accurate if you counter strafe, stop, and tap fire, you are highly mobile and you can move around, take a few shots, move around, take a few shots, and you can usually challenge multiple enemies. Now, a big problem with the Vandal, though, is it's really hard to control that spray once it gets away from you, and a lot of people are turning the corner, insta-crouching, and trying to spray, and that's just so damn hard. If you don't kill the enemy right off the bat, getting that headshot or converting on that headshot is just not going to be very likely, and tapping is going to be far more consistent. Definitely start practicing tapping more and standing a lot more and using mobility or moving in between a certain amount of taps. That's going to give you the most impact on the Vandal. Now, going on to the Phantom, there's not much about the Phantom that you need to know, but what you should be doing every single time is you should be trying to spray through smokes every single opportunity. One of the biggest, maybe even the biggest reason to play Phantom in the first place is the fact that it doesn't have any tracer through smokes, which means that enemies can't track you. So every single opportunity, especially if you're with your team and you're not going to get swung on by giving up your information, definitely just spray through every single smoke. Then the next weapon we got to get to is the Operator, and you should be always mixing up where you're holding and where you're peeking from, whether you're playing on attack or defense with an op, always, because you never want an enemy to be prepared for where the Operator is, because that element of surprise is so powerful, because if enemies know exactly where you are, they could use all these different types of abilities like flashes and stuns and smokes to force you out. Now, specifically if you are Jett, not only should you be mixing up where you're holding, and of course you can mix up elevation too, but you should also be mixing up how aggressive and passive you are. Sometimes you should be pushing really far forward and playing an aggressive angle with Jett. Other times you should be playing passive. That sort of mix up and the ability to mix it up in multiple different ways makes it almost impossible for enemies to ever predict you. Now, moving on to the classic pistol, one of the by far most broken aspects of the classic pistol is that the moving and jumping inaccuracy on the right click is basically non-existent. Now, the way that you could abuse this is you can actually jiggle around corners and just counter strike very simply, and you don't even really need to do it perfectly, and you could be pretty accurate, and you can just aim around the head, and usually one of these will connect with the head. This allows you to just jiggle, peek, even people that have ghosts, get some potential free damage or pick in, and instantly already be moving back behind natural cover in a way that the enemy has a very small window of time to kill you, and you're just like a blur going in and out and doing some damage in the process. Now, moving on to the next weapon that we got for you is the Ghost, and the Ghost is honestly the most forgiving fast tapping weapon in the entire game, and it allows you to be highly mobile in between your shots. You could take a few shots here, take a step to the left, take a few shots, take a step to the right, and it's pretty damn accurate as long as your counter strafing is on point. You don't need to be committing to every single Ghost spray and crouching and just trying to full commit to one spray while staying still, because in pistol round, if you are crouched and stationary, that is the easiest way that you're gonna get headshotted right away. Now, move on to the next weapon on our list. It's the Bucky, and just keep in mind that with the Bucky, you actually have to be really close to one-tap enemies with full armor. I've seen way too many times that people like push forward and they think they're close enough. They try to use the primary fire and they just don't quite kill the enemy, and before they get that second round off, they just die. It doesn't have as fast a fire rate in between rounds, so it's not as forgiving as something like a Shorty. Now, moving on to the Shorty and really shotguns in general, is you should be positioning differently depending on the type of agents you're up against. Specifically, what type of flashes are you up against? Some flashes just don't counteract you very good when you're holding a close angle with a Shorty, especially Omen Paranoia and Reyna's Blind, Reyna's Leer, because you can still see them if you're close enough to them. So let's say you're challenging or holding Haven, Garage, if they just like full blind you, you could easily punish these people as they turn a corner thinking that you're not going to be able to see them at all. And then on top of that, make sure that you are making the first action on Shorty. If an enemy is going to be swinging you soon, unless they have no idea you're there and they're just not going to check because you're holding like a really far up angle that they're very unlikely to check, it is typically better for you to be the one to swing them. Use that Piku's advantage and engage them. Don't let them pre-fire or basically swing and shoot at you, because if their crosshair placement's good, they're gonna kill you before you have any chance to react. So definitely keep that in mind. Now moving on to the next weapon on the list, we got the Stinger. And the best thing that you could do with the Stinger is run and gun, baby, run and gun. And what I mean by that is the Stinger's really accurate even when you're moving from those close ranges. And from those close ranges, its time to kill is absolutely ridiculous. If you are in the second round, right, and you don't really want to upgrade fully, you could buy armor and a Stinger, and if enemies are just rocking classic pistols, you can legit just rush them down with the Stinger and get like a guaranteed kill almost no matter what. And it's even better if you're engaging close angles with something like a Leer from Reyna or a Phoenix Flash. Enemies are just going to get eaten up very quickly with the Stinger. Now moving on to the Frenzy. The Frenzy's about the same as the Stinger, but unlike the Stinger, from those mid ranges, you need to be able to control your burst, which does take a little bit of practice, so I'd highly suggest you just practice in the training room. Now, a really powerful thing about the Frenzy, though, as far as pistol rounds are concerned, is you can hold some of those longer cubbies where a Shorty wouldn't be effective, but if an enemy wants to peek you, they have to peek the entire cubby, and you are really far from the pivot angle, which is a concept that we went over in a lot of other videos. But essentially, the Frenzy is almost guaranteed to get that one kill. It is pretty decent from that mid to close range, and those are the reasons why it's being used in EU quite a bit, actually, in pro play. Now, moving on to the next weapon that we got to talk about for you in this video is the Sheriff. Now, what you should actually know about the Sheriff is that it's extremely easy to headshot people when they're crouched committing to a spray. If an enemy turns the corner on you and they just start spraying, if they don't instantly headshot you, if you just take your time with that first shot and hit them right in the head, it is incredibly easy when they're not moving and, you know, just spraying. It's very easy to hit that shot. On top of that, just make sure that you're always wall banging all over the place, and make sure you're wall banging with head level crosshair placement, and you're gonna get a lot of damage and sometimes even just free kills, just dealing tons and tons of damage through all sorts of structures. Now moving on to the next weapon that we got for you in the video, it's the Marshal. Now in a pinch, if you're crouching, the Marshal is almost perfectly accurate, so if an enemy is pushing you, you can always just instantly crouch and shoot them in the body, especially if you already know that they're weak. Now something about the Marshal that you need to understand is, unlike the Operator that got a huge amount of nerfs that make it really bad at jiggling people or things like that, the Marshal is not that way at all. It can still jiggle peek corners really well, and honestly, with the Operator changes, the Marshal is actually probably going to be better and better going forward, because its power level is still pretty high for eco rounds, enemy save rounds, and just holding a really long sight line on defense for so damn cheap. Now moving on to the next weapon that we got for you on the list is the Ares. And the Ares is honestly one of the best eco buys or forces in the entire game for this one reason, and it's the fact that it operates on a different axis of gunplay. And what I mean by that is, most ARs and just most guns in the game operate in a very linear way. You're trying to swing people, you're trying to hold an angle and shoot people, you're trying to spray enemies down, things like that. But what the Ares does is, if you are holding certain areas, enemies just can't challenge you because you have that wall bang capability and that incredibly large magazine. Especially when you're trying to force buy and challenge ARs, sometimes the best thing to do is fight them on a different axis rather than just taking straight up fair engagements with a much weaker weapon like the SPECTRE, because you're just gonna lose that matchup almost every single time unless your enemy just misses all their shots. Now moving on to the next weapon that we got for you is the big brother of the Ares, the Odin. And what you should be doing with the Odin every single time is make sure that you're always aiming down the sight, because specifically with the Odin, the actual rate of fire is actually the maximum amount instantly. You see, normally it actually ramps up, but when you are aimed down the sights, it's already at that max. So it actually does increase its DPS by quite a bit. So always, when you're using the Odin, make sure you're aiming down that sight. Now moving on to the next weapon that we got for you, it's the Guardian. And similar to the Sheriff, with the Guardian, you want to take things slow. You see, the Guardian is typically not about hitting the maximum amount of shots. If you're trying to do that, there's a lot of weapons that are better for that. But what the Guardian can do is they can win a matchup with just one perfect shot, and it can do it with the highest amount of first shot accuracy in the game besides sniper rifles. Basically what I'm saying is you need to become numb to the panic and just plant your feet, aim for your shots, and connect with them, especially if an enemy is crouched. It is incredibly easy. But if you're holding a very long angle, aim down that sight and hold those really tight peak angles from afar, and you can get tons of value from those far away angles where an enemy's head will just be barely peeking. Just put your crosshair right there, wait for an enemy's head, and go for those shots every single time. And the Guardian's also one of those weapons where if you master or practice it a lot, it's actually going to help your Vandal gameplay tremendously. So do yourself a favor, run around with the Guardian quite a bit in free-for-all until you win a couple. Now, moving on to the next weapon that we got for you on the list is none other than the Bulldog. Now, the Bulldog is a pretty unforgiving weapon if you don't learn to burst this gun. You pretty much should only be sticking to burst fire at the maximum. Trying to control your spray with this gun is most of the time not going to convert into anything unless the enemy is already pretty weak. Now, moving on to the next weapon that we got for you on the list is none other than the Judge. And something actually pretty powerful about the Judge is if you're crouching, you can shoot from really damn far away. So if you're holding a really untraditional angle with the Judge, you can actually kill people from like mid-range with the Judge, which is pretty incredible. And something that you should always be doing with the Judge, especially when you're killing enemies that are swinging you or you're swinging an angle with enemies, you should always be thinking about the next target you're gonna flick to as soon as you kill that first target, because oftentimes you can usually kill multiple people as long as you're already ready and flicking instantly, so you don't have any time when you kill that first person. You're like thinking or debating, you're already ready and moving on to the next target. Now moving on to the last weapon that we got for you in this video, it's none other than the Spectre. And the Spectre is the most reliable weapon in the entire game for hitting shots and controlling. It is incredibly easy to control, it's incredibly easy to hit body shots consistently on it. It's just an all-around solid gun. Now when you are buying this gun in like that second round after you won that pistol round, it is incredibly important that you maintain proper distancing at all times. You see, some people are going to be forcing things like stingers, and if you get in their effective range, their time to kill is faster than yours. Same thing with the shotgun, same thing with a lot of the other weapons that people are traditionally going to be using in eco. You got to be careful, and when you are using the Spectre, especially when you know enemies can't be affording ARs, you should traditionally be playing in that mid to slightly outside of mid-range. Because if the enemy is poor, there is almost nothing that can punish you for playing in that range, but if you're too close, there is a ton of weapons that can punish you for playing in that close up range. But you're not going to be able to pop off on any of these weapons if you don't have the required mechanical skill, and for that, go to the GameLeap website right now because we have in-depth mechanical courses, Radiant Agent VOD reviews, map guides, and much more. Don't miss out on our insane 50% off sale right now, and the link's down below. But that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for coming by. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time.